Hi, I'm Larissa with IdeateTV, and we are here with Marek Dobrowolski. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes.
Great. He's an award-winning production designer. He's worked on over 50 feature films, miniseries, TV pilots, and TV series, including Justified, The Last Ship, Mr. Mercedes, and the final season of The Walking Dead. His most recent production is the film I'll Find You, which was released on February 25th. How did you get into production design?
Well, I'm originally from Poland. I went to the Academy of Fine Arts in Warsaw, and I studied painting and then graphic design, and I was a graphic designer for a while after I finished. And then I took another 2 years, after I got my bachelor's, I took another 2 years of studies in the field of theater, film, and television design. And I was a theater designer for a couple of years. And then I had an opportunity to get a Fulbright scholarship. And I came on a Fulbright scholarship to the States to study lighting design. In Warsaw, when I was working for the National Opera House and Ballet, I was actually designing a series of ballets to Gustav Mahler's Fifth Symphony. And I met Alvin Ailey, the famous choreographer from the American Dance Company. I think that was the full name, I can't remember now. And his lighting designer, Chanel Spence, and Mallory Perry, too, told me about the technology of the lighting design, that how they have been using it. And I knew a little about it, but not very well. I've been to New York and I saw the chorus line a couple of years earlier. I went with a theater production to New York, and we performed in New York and upstate, and we went to Chicago and some other places. And I was fascinated by the computer boards and the computer possibilities of designing lights. And in Europe, in the European tradition, the theater designer kind of works with the lights, but there's always a technician in the theater, because most of the theaters are subsidized. That means they have their houses, and in that house you have the lighting package and everything's there. So in the United States, especially on Broadway and off Broadway, and also on the West End in England, production are set up for individual stages. So therefore, the lighting design profession has been developed many, many years ago. And when I saw Alvin Ailey's production, I saw the simplicity of the sets, which is on one hand against what I do, because I like to make the sets look great and rich and opulent. But I think the combination of the two was something that I was fascinated with. Mm-hmm. And they put me together with a student forum of stage design in New York City on the Lower West Side. And that was a postgraduate private school where you could study under the auspices and under the direction of famous Broadway designers.
Oh, wow.
And those designers, there were a couple of fields. There was stage design, there was costume design, scenic painting the backgrounds, and also lighting design. And Lester Polyakov was very kind when he found out from they put me in touch, and when he found out that I'm interested in the field of lighting design, he offered me a scholarship.
Wow.
Not a scholarship, really. He offered me to come for free for 1 year to study at his school, but he didn't have a scholarship. Mm-hmm. So through the Fulbright Foundation, there was an exchange program between Poland and the United States. And I was able to get that Fulbright scholarship and came to New York and studied lighting design again. After I studied for 2 years, I think. I was back and forth because I had breaks. I was doing theater in Europe, in The Hague, in the Royal Theater in The Hague, and also in Amsterdam, in the Public Theater. So those kind of studies, instead of 2 years, stretched to nearly 3 years. And then I stayed in New York and worked off Broadway, and just came to a conclusion that the conditions I had in Europe and Poland in the theater design aspect of it were better. You had more money, you had more finances, but I love New York and I wanted to stay in New York. So I switched to movies. I met
Wow.
an agent, actually a manager. I remember he was John Cryer's manager, the guy from the Two Men and a
Two and a half
Baby. No,
men.
two and a half men, yeah,
Yeah.
two and a half men, yeah. John Cryer. And they introduced me uh, to the Canon Group. It was many, many years ago. It was late 80s. And I designed 9 movies for them, a series of fairy tales with famous actors, Amy Irving, who was then Steven Spielberg's wife, and Christopher Walken, and it was a big group of famous actors. Rebecca De Mornay. We did fairy tales like Puss in Boots and Sleeping Beauty, and
Very
that was
cool.
how I came to the States and started to be a production designer in the movie business.
That's awesome. What do you think that that scholarship of sorts that brought you over here was kind of like a turning point in your life, or do you think you probably would have come out here anyway?
No, it was a turning point. The turning point was after I finished studying lighting design,
Mhm.
when I realized that if I want to stay in New York, and that was a tumultuous period in Poland, I couldn't go back because there was martial law, and we still had a communist government, and when the martial law was declared, I didn't want to go back because I wouldn't be able to leave.
Right.
So actually, it was a choice to stay with the States, and I was hoping to continue the theater career and do some Broadway shows, but I just realized that because they're not subsidized, because it's so difficult to do a Broadway show, you can't make a living from theater,
Right.
unfortunately, in the States. As we
Yeah.
all know, we love theater, we love to work in New York, and right now I'm in Chicago, so there's some great theater here too. And I thought I just need to express myself in a maybe different way, and started after the Cannes film. I stayed in New York, did a couple of movies, independent movies. Then there was a lot of independent movies, and in '91 I moved to Los Angeles.
Nice. So you kind of just came here and you didn't look back. You were like, this is where I'm meant to be. And even if I can't work in theater, movies are great.
Yeah, in a way, I still had my contacts with the European world of theater, and but actually after I did my last plays in New York, and I started doing movies, I never went back.
That's great. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your most recent film, I'll Find You, and what it was like working on that, and maybe a little bit about the process?
Yes, well, I'll Find You is a World War II movie,
Mhm.
and I was introduced to Martha Coolidge, the director, and Fred Roos, the producer. Fred he was the producer of Francis Ford Coppola's All the Godfathers and a couple of other great movies. And also, he currently is one of the producers of Sofia Coppola's movies.
Mhm.
And Martha Coolidge is a well-known director who has made a couple of very interesting movies. And I met them in Los Angeles. Was introduced to them by a producer, Richard Rothschild. And they told me about the story, they gave me a script, and they said that they want to produce it in Poland. It's a World War II story that takes place in Poland. It's a story of relationship, a love affair between Polish Christian boy and a Polish Jewish boy. And it starts when they're kids, when they're 10, 11 years old, in a city called Łódź, and Łódź was a very specific city where it had 50% of them were Catholics, 30%, I think, were Jewish. There was 10% of Germans and 10% of Russians. So it's a whole melting pot of cultures. And those kids went to a music school, and the music united them. Music was the common language. They all spoke Polish, but they had different, I would say, religion, if I can say so. I mean, that's how it was. And there was this not love affair, but kind of adoration and conflict between a boy and a girl. She was a very good violin player. The boy was not so good, but he started singing. And we meet them in that school. I don't want to tell the whole story, I want the audience to look at the movie. And then we meet them 10 years later, just on the eve of World War II. And the war starts, and their lives have changed completely. They have been separated. She and her family was sent to a series of concentration camps, and he vowed to find her. And that's the rest of the story. You have to see the movie to know the rest.
I'm enthralled. I want to watch it like right after I get off this call.
Yes, you should watch it. It's very romantic. I would say it's kind of a tearjerker, a little old-fashioned, but the genre is still very alive and very well crafted by Martha. And we had wonderful music, and it was a beautiful script written by David Ward, who wrote The Sting, and he wrote many other scripts. And the cinematography was done by a Polish cinematographer who is a friend of mine, who actually also lives in New York. He lived in New York and lives now in Los Angeles, Alexander Brushinsky. And we met each other when we were teenagers. He left, I left, and then our lives entangled, and we met in New York, and then he moved to Los Angeles. I followed a couple of years later and found him in Los Angeles. And then by chance, we worked on The Craft with Andrew Fleming, the director who he worked on a couple of movies before. And then when Martha, when I met Martha and she talked about the movie, I mentioned that maybe we should think about a Polish-speaking DP. It would be easier to work with the local crews.
Right.
And so I introduced Alexander to Martha and Fred, and all four of us, with Richard, the producer. Then Richard unfortunately had to leave because of some family sickness. We started the pre-production actually in the city of Łódź where it took place.
Wow. Very nice. It sounds like a good group of people to work with on this.
Yes, and it was very interesting because I was able to reconnect with some people I knew in Poland. I still had a family there. My brother and his family, I go often. My wife is German, and my kids are trilingual. They're 17 and 15, and we travel to Europe all the time. Now, because of the pandemic, we haven't been there for nearly 3 years. But we had that connection. So it was interesting when I went back to Poland, because I haven't worked there for so many years.
Right.
And I mostly worked in theater. I just did one movie as a decorator, and I didn't really like it because I didn't like the fact that on stage it's me and the director. We design, we produce this, and you're there, and it's magical opening night, and I move on. Here in film, it's you and the director. You develop the concept, the visual concept. Then you start shooting. The cinematographer enters in the phase of finishing phase of developing the concept and finding locations and approving the sets. And then you shoot the movie where actually the cinematographer takes over and that's his with me as the person who delivers all those sets. I always say that if you see me on the set, that means something is wrong, because I should not be there, because it should be all finished and done. And I normally come to the set just to see and attend the filming and see the actors and see how the whole environment works with what I have designed. And then after you finish shooting the movie, then it's the next group of people, which is the editor and the director. And then we have the final product. So there are like three different groups of the creative groups that are contributing to the final result of a movie. So there's many more aspects and many more levels of creative levels of interacting with different talents. So working on a movie in Poland, I had to hire art directors, designers, set designers, concept designers, and we had to develop all those. I think there was more than 100 sets, and we moved from one city to another. We shot in actually 2 different cities, and then we came back 6 months later to shoot a couple of scenes in a Philharmonic, which was actually for the Lyceum Hall in Carnegie Hall. Because we could not get that Philharmonic Hall when we were there for the first 7 months of preparation and shooting. Sorry. So it was interesting to work with a great local talent, a local costume designer. And we all, I always like to work with people that have a high kind of artistic standard, and have done interesting movies, and everybody comes from different sources, and everybody contributes their own knowledge and talent to the project. So that was very interesting. And the movie is very rich, and it's very tragic, but has a sweet ending, and it's something that the younger generation, we hear about all the wars all the time now, what's happening in the Ukraine. So I think people should see movies like that. It's a different angle. It's not action. It's not the thrill that we get from action movies, but it's something that speaks about human condition and love, which is eternal.
That sounds beautiful. I'm gonna go watch it like right now. So
You should watch it right now, yes, and you should tell your friends to watch it and have movie nights.
Yes, exactly. Well, thank you so much for telling us about your experience and your new project that was out February 25th. Is it available everywhere on all streaming?
Yes, it's available on all streaming, and I think it's still in some theaters.
Okay, great.
Because it was released in the theaters too.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. It was so nice to meet you.
Thank you. Very nice meeting you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.